40% of Americans can't read? What?
Everywhere you look, you will see the headlines. Kids these days don't know how to read. Literacy is on the decline. Kids don't read for pleasure anymore.
What?
And some want to say that we are living through a literacy crisis. You'll even see some claim anymore.
What?
And some want to say that we are living through a literacy decline. Kids don't read for pleasure anymore.
What?
And some want to say that we are living through a literacy is on the decline. Kids don't read for pleasure anymore.
What?
And some want to say that we are living through a literacy crisis. You'll even see some claim that 40% of American kids can't read. That's not true, by the way, and we're going to talk about that later in this video. Are we living through a literacy crisis, or is this just a long-standing failure dressed up as something new?
Okay.
If you want to understand the American literacy crisis, you need to know three numbers. First up, 40%. That's the percentage of American fourth graders who cannot read at what's called a basic level. Every few years. First up, 40%. That's the percentage of American fourth graders who cannot read at what's called a basic level. Every few years.
9 years old?
Students around the country take a test called the National Assessment of Educational Progress, or the NAEP. This is also sometimes called the nation's report card.
Yeah.
And it allows us to track educational progress throughout the country.
It's nice.
Reading scores have remained relatively stable since 1992 until 2019, when they started to decline. Sometimes that's reported as saying that 40% of students can't read, but that's not what those statistics mean. So now 40% of fourth graders can't read at what's considered a basic level, and only 31% can read at what's considered a proficient level. The NAEP also defines those terms, and just because a kid can't read at basic level doesn't mean that they can't read. But the literacy crisis...
That sounds like they can't read, bro. Man, that's making me think that they can't read. Yeah, I'm getting worried about this. Like, we used to have a kid, he like 10 or 11, he couldn't read, and we'd be driving around, and he'd be asking his little sister to read the signs for him. And we called this kid retarded so much that he learned how to read.
doesn't stop at elementary schools. And that brings us to our second number, 28%.
And we bullied them into reading.
That's the share of U.S. adults that are at the lowest level of literacy.
Whoa, wait, hold on. Let me listen.
Number 28%. That's the share of U.S. adults that are at the lowest level of literacy.
28% of adults. So the top performers are going down and the bottom performers are going up. That sounds pretty bad.
In the last decade, that number has increased by 9 points. This doesn't mean that those adults...
Wait a minute. 9 points. That's 50% almost. Because the scale was at 20 to begin with. So 9 points sounds like it's not a lot. But when you start at 20 and you go up by 9, that is insane.
Adults can't read, but it does mean that they are what's called functionally illiterate. This means that they lack literacy skills which would allow them to navigate the world and go about their day-to-day tasks.
Oh my God.
And our final number is 21. That's Mississippi's ranking in fourth grade literacy as of 2022. In 2013, Mississippi was ranked 49th. They were basically at the bottom of the country's rankings, and now they are well above the middle. And that's because they saw the problem and they actually tried to solve it.
So they taught the kids how to read?
So at the end of this video, we're going to talk about what Mississippi has done right. But first, we're going to take a slightly closer look at that NAEP data. Literacy scores have been declining since 2019. This might not be that surprising because something
everybody knows this
happened in 2020, which caused a lot of school closures, and we've generally seen learning loss across the board. Absenteeism is...
Learning loss is not... Have you guys ever seen, like, you ever been to a local restaurant or something like that, and you had the restaurant had to write something out, like, with, like, handwriting, and, like, all the words are spelled wrong?
also up post-COVID, which does complicate actually teaching kids how to read. One group of student hasn't seen a decline in their test scores, though. These are students who are already in the 90th percentile. So what we're seeing is a widening gap between those students who are reading quite well and those students who are struggling to read at a basic level. This tells us something important. If we want
they're dumb and they're getting dumber.
to improve American literacy, the biggest impact we can have is by focusing on those students who are struggling to read the most. And that's going to be important when we talk about Mississippi in a few minutes. But even those top performing students, like the students who would go on to study at really great colleges and universities, are also struggling. At the University of Texas here in Austin, some professors told their school newspaper that they would be shortening reading assignments and transitioning to assigning things like YouTube videos and audiobooks instead of physical.
This is UT. Like I have friends that graduate from UT. Fuck. Does this mean that I have a degree from University of Texas because I'm a React streamer? Like, do I get course credit at UT right now? I should, right?
Physical books because students simply didn't have the patience for the reading assignments anymore. One professor was told by his students that Shakespeare's Hamlet was too long to read. Now, Hamlet is the long
TLDR. TLDR for Hamlet? I love this. This is amazing. Oh my god.
Shakespeare play, but it is about 30,000 words. It's much shorter than the vast majority
That's
of
nothing. I've read twit longers that are longer than that.
novels out there. These professors cited things like the rise of video content, but also phone usage, as leading to a decline in their students' reading abilities. But they've decided that they have to give in and change with the times so that they can meet their students where they are. That same professor who was told that Hamlet was too long, he used to teach...
They don't need to meet the students where they are. The students need to meet the school where it is. This is embarrassing. Because this school is going to be churning out retards. Like whenever you are working at like an engineering factory or an engineering plant, you're going to get a sheet of paper and it's going to have instructions, and there isn't going to be a TikTok video that's going to explain it to you. If the Bible has 700K words, yeah, I know. Like, there's plenty of books that have way more. Like, my dad has like a copy of the Brothers Karamazov just randomly on the floor. The thing's like this fucking thick. So, no, this is outrageous. And I'm not a reader. I don't like reading. But even I know this is ridiculous.
10 plays per semester. He's now teaching 6 in his classes. So even college students at good schools are struggling to read, and many of them are going to become adults who hardly read at all.
That's right.
Many Americans simply don't read books, and I think about 10% of college graduates haven't read a book in the last year. They don't know how to read.
I don't read books. I don't. They're a waste of time. Like, I don't read for pleasure. The only thing that I read for is information. I spend hours every day reading, but I don't read books.
Maybe that's because they haven't been taught how to be a good reader. All right, let's pause for a second and ask ourselves what it means to be a good reader. The psychologist Daniel Willingham has this book called The Reading Mind. And in this book, he points out that reading is actually a fairly demanding task. First, you have to be able to understand the words on the page, and that's usually what we mean when we say that we're teaching kids to read. But actually, reading involves 3 additional levels of representation. You need to be able to extract ideas from sentences. You need to be
That's hard.
able to then connect the idea across those sentences.
You're out. That's it. No, I can see why we're having problems. Yep, I get it. Immediately. Yep, this totally makes sense.
And then you integrate this within a model in your mind.
Okay. Settle down. All right. This is... I'm out, bro. Like, people misunderstand tweets. You think they're going to be able to read a book? No.
That answers the question of what the text is about. And Willingham notes that many readers fail at the second level. They're not able to point out obvious contradictions in a paragraph that they read. If you're not reading at a level where you could even catch obvious contradictions, then you're going to struggle when you're reading sets of instructions or complicated forms. And really that contributes to what we called functional illiteracy before. That's that illiteracy that...
It's like you can read, but you can't ever read when it matters. You can only read when it doesn't matter. You can read the sports stats. You can read, a romance novel about how a woman falls in love with a lizard. And, and the lizard's also a billionaire, by the way. But you can't read instructions on how to put together a vacuum cleaner. You can't figure that out.
Makes it difficult for you to navigate your day-to-day life. Being able to connect ideas is actually a skill that you have to develop. And I found that when I was teaching philosophy at some universities, that skill was something that my college students still needed to develop. I found that the worst question I could possibly ask when I started a discussion of some text in the classroom was, what is this text about? Because most students could tell you what some of the sentences said, but they weren't able to form a picture of the cohesive whole. That meant that
You know what? I don't know if he's going to put this together. Think about how many people on Twitter say, Grok, summarize this for me. Uh-oh. That's a lot, isn't it? Wow. Yep, good example. Yep. That's right there in front of you.
I had to guide them through interpreting a text. I would have to ask them questions like, what is the thesis of this article or this book or whatever it was that we were reading? Where are the arguments and the evidence for that thesis? And then is there any irrelevant or unnecessary information?
You're getting increasingly depressed? You don't have to be depressed. In the future, these people will be turned into human batteries, and some of them will be turned into food. And this problem will work itself out. You don't have to worry about this. Everything's going to be okay.
This was a process that I would guide my students through so that they could learn how to read better. But there was another barrier that my students faced, which is that they lacked a lot of background knowledge, which helped them make sense of a text. Let's say you want to read a really big book like War and Peace. Well, War and Peace is a historical novel. It is set in a particular time and place. You don't need to know all of the historical details in order to make sense of War and Peace, but having some idea of European history and maybe France's connection to Russia, knowing who people like Napoleon or Louis XVI are.
Napoleon, remember he's from that movie with the llama? Remember him? That was a good movie. It came out when I was in high school.
Things that would be useful for you as you're reading. It would make reading War and Peace a less demanding
Pedro,
task.
remember him?
And I found that a lot of my students lacked historical knowledge or just general world knowledge, which would make reading books easier. I think part of this...
I think that's actually a really good point that he's bringing up, is that people process information inside of an apparatus of other information. So like when you read something and you think like, oh, okay, the year is 1943. Okay, well, what happened in 1943? Well, there was I think there was some kind of big fucking war or some shit, right? And so, but if you don't know that, that's going to harm your ability to process this in a contextualized way. Don't ask Tectone? Well, that was in 1800.
To do with the fact that at some point we started to emphasize critical thinking over memorization of facts. You can find this a lot in popular discussions of pedagogy. The idea is that you should teach students how to think rather than what to think. And there's some truth to that. But I think
that we're at a position now where we're at neither. I think that the increasingly more important need to fit in with the groupthink and the amount of people who get ostracized for not fitting in with groupthink. Think about what happened to people with COVID. Think about people who have different views on trans ideology. Think about people who are pro or against Donald Trump. Think about people like with the Epstein files and how, polarizing that was, the H-1B visa thing. And so the ICE stuff, think about, ICE stuff, think about climate change, etc. And so all of these types of thinking, I think that critical thinking has been systematically removed from our society, and it's by design. And the reason why I think so, and even if it's not by design, it is a natural entropy of human thought and collective thinking. Because what's happened now is that you have so many people that constantly think about the same stuff. And if anybody has, like, how many of you guys have seen somebody on Twitter, for example? How many times does somebody get called a racist without also being called sexist, homophobic, transphobic, and like, I don't know, what's the other, ableist, right? Usually this is like an array of insults that are just thrown out at somebody. Right? Like, yeah, you never pull one card, you always get the full Exodia. And so what happens is that people are taught not to critically think, because critical thinking will lead them to conclusions that bring them against the established dogma of their worldview. So I think that really believing science and believing the outcomes of science is a great example of this. If you believe science, you would think that there are two sexes and that you can't change your sex. But if you believe science, then you could also believe that certain types of man-made climate change would be a negative impact on the world. Both of these opinions will get you ostracized from each of their respective political parties. This is the way that people have been taught systematically not to critically think, because they're afraid to. Because when you critically think and you go against the grain, and he knows this, I'm sure, there are studies with this, where, like, for example, it's like measuring a line, and a guy goes into an experiment area, and he thinks that he's doing the experiment, but he's actually the only one being experimented on. And the guy's like, okay, which line is the longest? And he's picking the longest one, but everybody else in the room picks the second or the third longest one. He eventually starts waiting for the group before he gives his answer. And the study was done in order to basically explain how strong the human desire is to fit into groupthink. This is very well established in conformity. Yes, exactly. This is very well established. It's defined, it's documented, and it's been repeated multiple times. So I think that critical thinking is, like, it's not that kids are learning critical thinking and not facts nowadays. It's that kids aren't learning critical thinking, and now they don't even have the facts they don't have anything. Yeah, they don't have fucking anything.
There's a crucial error that's being made there, which is that actually,
yeah, when you critically think, you can go against yourself. I think that, and this is a big, I'm gonna have a big Reddit moment here, but I think that religion and a lot of people's adherence to religion and extreme political dogma is because they're afraid of the conclusions of their own critical thinking. I think human beings in general, our cognition has evolved faster than our ability to cope with our cognition. That's what I think.
About the world and learning facts about the world goes hand in hand with learning how to think critically, because it allows you to build a mental model of the world, and you can see where new facts might fit in, or where they actually contradict things that you should already know. Critical thinking and memorization might actually go hand in hand, and they help us to produce.
Critical thinking provides a frame of reference, or sorry, memorization provides a frame of reference for critical thinking, because critical thinking is informed by what you know.
Better readers. Now, some experts do not want to call this a crisis. One researcher from Harvard University described American reading education as a very stable level of mediocrity.
Oh! Thank God. I was worried for a minute there.
We've never done a great job, and things have been getting a little bit worse, but this isn't new, and it's certainly not unprecedented. And there is a lot of fear-mongering about this.
Yes.
Let me tell you about the National Literacy Institute. If you've seen those headlines I mentioned about American literacy, there's a chance that you've seen statistics from this website. For instance, you might have heard that 21% of American adults are illiterate. But
it's more than that. Anybody who's, again, anybody who has seen people read knows it's way more than that.
Actually look at the website, and I'll put a link down below as well. There's no explanation for that number, about 21% of American adults being illiterate. No definition is also given of what they mean by illiterate. And the numbers you find on this website are painting a much worse picture than the numbers that you find elsewhere. I actually emailed the National Literacy Institute to ask them where they got these numbers and if they could explain some of them to me, but I did not hear back.
Oh, what a surprise. Like the reason, by the way, my source is that I made it the fuck up. That's where I'm coming from. I just made it the fuck up. I think it's like 40%. I think 40% of people are fucking retarded and they can't read. I think it could be 50.
And if that changes between the time of recording and the time of posting, I will issue a correction. I'd be happy to do it. But
it looks like
some fact checkers reached out to the NLI in 2024, and they also never heard back. Those fact checkers concluded that the NLI was using an overly expansive definition of illiterate. They were also misdescribing the data that they were citing, and they were misleadingly describing their data as new, when in fact this data does not come out on an annual basis. National Literacy Institute is just another name for the National Literacy Professional.
Oh. Well, here we go. Of course, they're creating a problem and then selling the solution. Of course, right? And so I think they're probably bad actors. They're identifying, they're saying, oh, wow, there's this huge problem. Here's 4 links that you can give us money or somehow interact with us in a way that's financially beneficial for us, that you can solve that problem. Wow. Okay. He's right about this. But again, I think it's higher than 21%. And I'm not even selling a course.
That's a private company that sells professional development courses for teachers. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, teachers often need more professional development as they further their careers. But the fact that they call themselves the National Literacy Institute, sometimes...
He's right that they're full of shit. I think this is beside the point of like the real issue here. But him looking at this organization, like this is one way that I always look at things. If somebody benefits from a certain narrative, I take their pushing of that narrative with more grains of salt.
Makes it seem like they're a research center, and it gives a lot of authority to the things that they put on their website. And I've noticed that people will cite this website uncritically. I've even seen other YouTubers cite this when they talk about American literacy.
I would never cite it. I would never. Because it's way higher. They're wrong.
I don't think those YouTubers were trying to mislead you. I think that they had the best intentions. Yeah. But I think they got fooled. But seriously, look at the website again. There's no sources. There's no research methods. There's nothing like that. It's just bullet points
made it up.
And numbers.
Yeah.
Where did the numbers come from? Well, the website doesn't tell you. I think anyone honestly looking at this data would say that there is a real problem with literacy in America.
Absolutely.
But we have to be able to say that there's a problem without engaging in fear-mongering or simply lying about it.
Yes.
Fear-mongering might even give you the impression that this is a problem that can't be solved. And that's not true. Like I mentioned before, some states have started to find...
I think you can teach a lot of kids how to read. I don't think you can teach everybody how to read. I think you can get to about 95%, though. 95%, somewhere around there. Like I think you can teach them how to use their reading.
Solutions like Mississippi. Between 2013 and 2022, Mississippi students dramatically improved their reading scores. This was a period where most states saw a decline. This was such a dramatic improvement that some commentators started calling this the Mississippi miracle. But it's not a miracle, it's just good policy. Because one researcher from the University of Toronto found that this improvement was linked to the Literacy-Based Promotion Act, or the LBPA. The Mississippi legislature passed the LBPA in 2013, and that bill did a couple of things. It expanded access to full-day pre-K programs. It focused education on phonics and the science of reading, so it actually changed how we were teaching students how to read. It invested in professional development for teachers.
This is what I said before. See, I was talking about how teachers are stupid. This is exactly what I was saying. You get what you pay for. You pay teachers $40,000 a year. That's what you get.
They would need more training. It identified struggling readers and then targeted them for specific interventions. So if a student was falling behind, they got additional help when it came to reading. And finally, some struggling third graders were held back for a year so that they would have more time to build.
Sometimes you got to do it. I mean, I understand that it's really embarrassing to be held back because you can't pass third grade, but I can guarantee you that it's even more embarrassing to not be able to read the instructions for your Roomba. I could promise you that.
Build their reading skills. The simple description, though, is that the LBPA took literacy seriously. It gave teachers the training they needed, it focused on struggling readers, and it gave kids time to learn how to read properly. So the LBPA had
And also, like, another thing that, like, this is like a subtext of this is that it underpins the one thing that I always talk about, which is direct, personal, immediate accountability. The teachers individually are accountable for this. The students that are having problems with reading are individually accountable for having those problems. Teachers are individually accountable for making those students do a better job, and students are individually accountable for doing a better job. Or they get held back. The moment that you apply individual accountability, the results of anything that you're doing will dramatically increase.
Very strong impact on those students at the bottom. It helped bring a lot of students from that below basic category to basic, and also students from basic to proficient.
There it is.
It had almost no impact on students who were already proficient, maybe moving them to the advanced category. But that's to be expected given the kind of interventions that were in the bill. What Mississippi demonstrated is that the decline in American literacy isn't inevitable. We can solve this problem, and it actually only cost Mississippi $15 million. That sounds like a really
That's nothing. So you're telling me it would only cost maybe like $1 billion across the whole country to just have kids understand graphs? I mean, that's it? Yes, they don't want that? Yeah, I don't think they want that.
big number, but the state's
there's got to
budget
be
is
a reason for that, huh?
$7.6 billion. So we are talking about fractions here. This doesn't solve every problem.
Yeah.
There are still adults in the United States who are functionally illiterate. There are plenty of adults who can read but simply choose not to. And we still need to figure out what to do about college students who can't keep up with assigned reading anymore. But
Kick them out of college. Kick them out. If you're
college students who can't keep up with assigned reading anymore. But
kick them out of college. Kick them out. If you're not good enough, you get kicked out. The fact is that we do not need that many people with these degrees. There are certain in-demand degrees that, yeah, maybe you have to maybe make up a little bit for it. But there's a lot of people that go to college to get a bullshit degree so they can go to a job that's a bullshit job at a bullshit company that makes a bullshit product that doesn't do anything. They would be better off if they were an electrician or they were doing something else that had a tangible beneficial effect on the world. We don't need more gender studies majors. We don't need more we don't need more business majors. I used to be in business school. You know what business school is? A waste of time. A colossal fucking waste of time. Let me tell you, in marketing, no bullshit. No. Any of you guys that went to business school, they made all of that shit up. They created vocabulary. They invented all these terms. So wrong, bro? No, I'm not talking about finance. I'm not talking about accounting. I'm not talking about anything else. I'm talking about management. This is, bro, we could have had a fucking class in astrology, and I think it would have given people better insight on how to advertise a product than marketing. It's a joke on management. Like, get the fuck out of here. It was such a waste of fucking time. Business management was bullshit. Complete bullshit.
Mississippi's success shows that the literacy crisis can be mitigated. We can help more people learn to read if we're smart about it. Before we go, let me ask you one question. Are you looking for a way to learn more and to stop mindlessly scrolling?
No.
Or do you want to have a healthier relationship with your phone
No.
and to use your screen time wisely?
No.
Well, if that's the case, then
No.
you should check out Imprint.
No.
Imprint is a beauously illustrated
I
and
don't want to
animated
learn.
learning app. They've built a highly visual and effective learning experience that's all based on bite-sized learning. They were named by Apple as one of the top educational apps, and they were generous enough to sponsor this video. Imprint is a way for you to learn about topics like philosophy or psychology or the science of happiness. And along the way, it's helping you build a daily learning habit. In fact, it only takes a few minutes per day. It is designed so that you only need to spend 2 minutes on the app.
This has got to be racist, right?
Experience. So it's easy to fit Imprint into your busy schedule. One of the most popular courses over on Imprint is Essential Philosophy, Theories, and Thinkers. This is a month-long philosophy course that was written by an actual university professor. This course touches on some of the most important philosophers and ideas throughout history, starting all the way back with Plato and Socrates. To try everything that Imprint has to offer for free for a full 7 days, you can scan the QR code, which is on the screen right now, or you can go to the link down in the description. The first 200 of you will get 20% off an Imprint annual subscription.
I gotta say, I really respect this guy's method of making videos. There's no bullshits, no random stuff. It's just him talking. It's just a guy talking. That's it. I like that. Yeah, I'll link you guys the video. I'll give it a like. Yeah, that was really, really good. That's a great video. Yeah, I like that a lot. And teachers don't fail students anymore because the teachers are afraid of the parents. No, I don't think that's the reason. I think that it's more systematic. Schools don't fail students because schools are afraid of being defunded. And if enough students fail, the school will get evaluated, the leadership might get changed, and they might get defunded. So it's actually a systematic problem that is